Hello, hello, hello. This is Priscilla with Scylla Travel, where I help you live the dream through travel. And I'm so glad that I have all of you on today. Thank you, thank you. Today we're talking about wine and cuisine on the fabulous river cruise. Let me just do a little bit of housekeeping. I just want to make sure that you can hear me. Can everyone hear me? Let me know if you can hear me. Put a one in the chat if you can hear me. So, because I have a second device, I have to have these things here just to make sure that I am heard. So let me check. Let me check to see if I am heard. There you go. So let me check. And I am heard. So, how is everyone today? Hello. Good evening, Amy. How are ya? Glad to see ya. Good evening, Steve. Nice to see you, Steve. Good evening, Elmira. Good to see you. And good to see you, Donna. How are you doing? Jocelyn, glad to have you. Kimberly, let's see. Kimberly, yes, glad to see you, Kimberly. Okay, now let me make sure that because I'm doing this webinar and people can also see me on um, Facebook. So, Facebook or YouTube, can you hear me? Just let me know. So, this is Priscilla with Scylla Travel, helping you live the dream through travel. And I help empty nesters who are entering their second stage or second phase of life. I help them live their dream, relive and rekindle those dreams that they had before they had to get out there and make a living for themselves. So today we're here to talk about an exciting new, well, not so new, but a river cruise. This is the 2024 version of a soulful uh, Epicurean experience, but our title for it is The Good Life and Soul, an Epicurean experience for Juneteenth 2024. And this is the second sailing. It'll be June of next year. And the first sailing of this particular itinerary, this is a special emphasis itinerary highlighting Black culture in France. And the first sailing will be this summer in August. But the cabins went so fast, they had to put another one out. We were like, travel agents like me were like, hey, that really sold out really fast. We need you to do another one. So the company did. The company is Alma Waterways. Yes, indeed. So today we're here to talk about this absolutely fabulous French river cruise. It's going to start out with 3 nights in Paris and then high-speed train to Lyon to embark on a 7-day river cruise on the Rhone River, 7 nights to Arles. That's in the Mediterranean. So we'll be going from the north part of France all the way to the Mediterranean, the southern part of France. So this is a special emphasis uh, tour, and it's on Black history and culture. So the company actually does. Hello, Christine. How are you doing? Glad to see you, Christine. Okay, so, and those of you who are on the replay, thank you for joining wherever you are in the world. If it's morning, afternoon, or evening, thank you for joining. So, this special emphasis river cruise is on Black heritage, Black culture in France. And the company Alma Waterways has done something for Jewish heritage in let's see, Austria and Germany, and they also do special emphasis in Spain and Portugal for Hispanic um, culture and heritage. And next year, they're actually going to be sailing the Columbia River, the Magdalena River in the country of Colombia, and I just can't wait. Okay, so the features of this trip will be um, a Black history and culture tours in Paris, Then at the end of the cruise, the Marseille Black History and Culture Tours. There will be jazz performances. It's a 7-night all-inclusive luxury river cruise. That means everything is included. I'll get into that in a second. With the 3 nights in Paris, all the tours and excursions are included. It's not like, it's not like your ocean liner. You pay one price, but then you have to pay to get off. It's not like that. Everything's included. So once you pay for it, the only thing you have to worry about is your tips and your souvenirs. That's it. Okay, so all the tours and exclusions are included, all the wine and spirits included, including beers. Uh, there's a daily sip and sail cocktail hour where the cruise manager goes over the activities for the next day. And then in the evening, they also have additional um, people coming on the ship doing performances, that sort of thing. So this is just going to be a magnificent, absolutely magnificent, excuse me, a magnificent trip. Whew. So Paris is going to start in Paris. Ooh la la, Paris. So we're going to stay at the Renaissance Paris Arc de Triomphe Hotel, located near the Arc de Triomphe. And I actually stay there because I actually sailed this itinerary, not this particular special emphasis tours, but I actually sailed on the Ama Christina in 2021, stayed at the Arc de Triomphe Hotel. It's within walking distance of all the shopping, public transportation, like the trains. The Parisians take trains everywhere, as well as the Arc is there within walking distance. And I actually walked over. So that's the Arc de Triomphe. That's the Arc of Triumph. That's where all the French heroes are supposedly memorialized. Or that is the Napoleon had this built to recognize his accomplishments as emperor. Okay, very good. Hi, nice to see you, Jocelyn. Good to see you. Glad to see you again. All right, so, like I said, I was there, and this was me in 2021 in front of the Arc de Triomphe. And that year, they were doing a special thing with the Arc where an artist, he's since passed away, he was famous for wrapping monuments, and he wrapped the Arc. And that, time that I was there, it was wrapped. And that's me and Julia Brown. She's a tour operator or a tour guide for Walking the Spirit Tour. She does the Black History tours in Paris. And we'll also have an opportunity to walk the Avenue Champs-Élysées. That's the most famous street in Paris. Now, the first stop, I'm just going to highlight some of the excursions because this presentation is more on the cuisine. This is a view. This is a picture that I took actually from on top of Montmartre, right? That is a hill, a famous hill and neighborhood in Paris. And so we were at the top and I was facing downrange. I'm ex-military, so of course I said downrange. So we were looking down because we were waiting for the light show because every evening Paris has a light show. That's what's called the City of Lights. So Montmartre is also a neighborhood, but it's actually a hill and it's like 430 feet high. It's in Paris's 18th arrondissement. That's just a district. It is famous for a vibrant nightclub. The scene at the in this area, you have lots of nightclubs. We were able to go and just sit and have dinner while they had singing. They just sing and dance, and there's lots of places there where there's clubs and restaurants where they have live entertainment there. So that is what Montmartre is famous for, but it's most famous for the Basilica of the Sacré-Cœur. Okay, so that is that big, huge basilica. It's an actual active church. People actively still worship there in that neighborhood. Okay, so Now, Montmartre was also dubbed Harlem in Paris at one time. This was during World War One, and I know those of you who were following, we talked about some of the famous um, African American musicians who went to Paris during World War One and after World War One, because they fought in World War One, and they loved it because in the United States during that time, it was highly hostile for African Americans. It was highly segregated, highly racist, and you could not really do much with your life during that period of time in the US. So a lot of them, once they volunteered to fight in the war, they were not allowed to actually carry weapons during World War One. However, some people went to fight for the French because the French did allow people to, or people of color, to fight in the French Legion. So, but this guy here, a picture of him, he is, his name is Eugene Jacques Boulard. He's the first African American combat pilot to be in uniform during World War One. So in the U.S., blacks soldiers were not allowed to do that. He actually has an interesting story. He actually um, stowed away on a steamship to Europe because his father used to tell him about um, how France had, freed the slaves so much earlier than the US, and that black people were treated equally in Paris and in France, and there was no segregation, any of that. So he believed his dad's stories, and he stowed away on a steamer. He landed in Scotland first, and then joined a troupe, where he was a performer, then became a boxer, and then when he became a boxer, he was booked in Paris. That's how he got to Paris. And so once he was in Paris, World War One broke out and he volunteered. And he started out he wasn't allowed to join the American army, and fight. So he joined the French army. So he was a French legionnaire and he rose to the ranks of pilot during World War One. So he was one of the very first black pilots ever. So, but he did fly under the French flag. Now, some of the other people here are, we talked about the Harlem Hellfighters. These folks, they were a regiment, the 369th Regiment from Harlem. There was a band. They were deployed to France to fight. They weren't allowed to fight with guns either. They weren't allowed, guns to fight, but they had a band and they used to play jazz on their band. So the French were exposed to jazz. And then after the war, many of them went back home, and then back home, they didn't receive such great treatment. So many of them went right back to France and they started bands. So there was a Harlem Hellfighters jazz ensemble. And some of those same folks who fought in the 369th started a band. And these folks lived in the Montmartre neighborhood. So during that time, and then we talked about Ada Bricktop Smith. She became one of the first club owners, black female club owners in Paris. She had a club and she hosted many of these artists and performers. We had Sidney Bechet. We talked about him the other day. He was a saxophonist, clarinetist. He was a jazz musician, the first solo jazz musician. We talked about Josephine Baker and how she went there in 1925 to become a performer. So Harlem in Paris. So it became known as Harlem in Paris, the Montmartre neighborhood during that time. So there's also a tour of Little Africa. Okay, so now these days, Paris has a huge neighborhood and a huge presence of people of African descent, people of the African diaspora, Northern and Western African descent. And many of them started to migrate to France hello, Joan. Many of them started to migrate to Paris from the former French colonies. So since the 1920s, more and more people from the colonies started to migrate to Paris. And many of them, like the Senegalese riflemen, actually fought in World War One, and they and their families stayed. So Little Africa is a neighborhood, and it's called the African District, and it is renowned for food, art and culture, and fashion. And we will be taking a tour to this neighborhood on this cruise. Also about Little Africa, um, or just France in general. France is home to Europe's largest African population. So I don't know how many people knew that. But out of all the countries in Europe, has the largest number of African peoples living there. Now, this is the Goudor neighborhood. I thought I could pronounce it. That's also French for the area, Little Africa. That's the French name for it. I obviously can't pronounce it properly, but that is a neighborhood, and it's famous for, if you go there and you've never been to Africa, that's the next best thing you could go. That's the next best place you can go to is Little Africa, because there are open air markets, because there are so many African people or people of African descent living there. The neighborhood is characterized by Africa. It's also famous for its cuisine and street food. So during the tour, we will be visiting this neighborhood and obviously trying out some of the food. I know I will. Now we move on to the Latin Quarter. So the Latin Quarter is home of Sorbonne University, and that university was established, I think, in the 1200s. It wasn't always here, but it's characterized by its bistros. So there are a lot of places that you can eat in the Latin Quarter. There's so many things you could do in the Latin Quarter. This is the next neighborhood. So you can do a lot in the Latin Quarter. This is also a place where many artists, writers, authors, and entertainers lived when they went to visit Paris. So this is one of the most famous streets, one of the oldest, and it is characterized by restaurants. It has the highest concentration of restaurants in Paris, this street, Rue de la. Can't pronounce the last name, but this street right here, Rue means street. Now, also, the Latin Quarter is also characterized by great writers, since it's close to the university. The university is right smack dab in the middle. And this is a famous bookstore called Shakespeare and Company. It's been established in the 50s, and it's a father-daughter duo. The dad left the bookstore to his daughter. And because this area was an academic area, there were many famous writers, poets, journalists who frequented and lived in the Latin Quarter. Now, here's a person of note, Paulette Nardal. She lived in 1896 to 1985, and she was a French writer and journalist from Martinique. That's one of the Caribbean islands. She was the first Black woman to study at Sorbonne University in 1920. So that's like amazing, right? To me, a lot of things we just don't know until we just started looking into it. And she was one of the founders of a theory called negritude. She also was friends and also introduced many of the Francophone academics to the writers, the African American writers that started the Harlem Renaissance. So the word negritude comes from the word negre and etude. Those are two French words. Negre means black, and etude is an attitude or a disposition. So it means blackness. So, and it was a framework for the critique and literary theory That was developed by Francophone intellects. So these folks, this academic crew, they sat down and they started a theory and they promoted Black pride, solidarity, human dignity, self awareness, because they wanted to set the standard for African identity, not just in France, but also in Africa as well. And it also fueled the Black is Beautiful movement in the US during the 60s. Now, how many people remember the Black is Beautiful movement? I remember that because my mom used to tell us to say that. We used to say, Black is beautiful. She used to have us say it to ourselves and each other and in the mirror growing up. So she used to have us say, Black is beautiful. Black is beautiful. We used to say that. My parents used to have us say that growing up. So that whole thing came out of this negritude um, sort of theory or this framework that these literary geniuses, these Black literary geniuses, back in the 20s started. And it all started with that same lady. Let's see if I can go back. Nope, can't go back, but I'm going to go forward. So here we go. Langston Hughes. So here's something you may not know. Langston Hughes, we do know who Langston Hughes is. Do you know who Langston Hughes is? How many people here know who Langston Hughes is? Let me know in the comments. So, when I was a kid growing up, my parents had us learn Black history we had cards. We didn't learn any of this in school. So, there was a group of parents, someone came up with these cards. They were like trading cards, but they were big. They're not like the small cards now, but they had different people, notable Black people for Black history, and we memorized. My mom used to quiz us on who these people were. Langston Hughes. Now, my mom knew him because my mother was born she was born in 29. So she came up during the Great Depression and she moved to New York in the 50s. So she remembers this. She remembers Langston Hughes. He was an American poet, socialist, activist, novelist, playwright, and columnist. And he stayed 6 months in Paris. And he himself, before he became mega famous, he actually worked on a ship and he ended up being in Paris because he always wanted to go there. And he stayed there for 6 months. Now, he lived among students of African descent in the Latin Quarter. So he actually met, let's see if I can go back here. He actually met Paulette Nardal. So Paulette Nardal and her sister introduced Langston Hughes as well as many of the other writers and famous poets, writers, journalists from America during the Harlem Renaissance, the Black ones. She introduced them to the French literaries. And so that is how the two became connected. And Paris became a place for writers to go. Now, farther down, also in the Latin Quarter, is Pantheon Square, which is where Josephine Baker was interred. So, Josephine Baker was a famous dancer and performer, civil rights activist, as well as she was a French spy. She was a spy for the French resistance during World War II. So she actually was honored as a hero in 2021, and they symbolically interred her at the Pantheon. The Pantheon is the Hall of Heroes, the Hall of French Heroes. Okay, so this is the view at night from the Renaissance Paris Arc de Triomphe because the Black History Tours and the Josephine Baker Tour will be done in Paris. And then we will move on to the next phase of our trip. And we'll transfer by high-speed rail to Lyon, France, taking the train from Paris. And it's really a nice experience. I did it. It was quite relaxing. It's not expensive. In France, they've got the rail goes all over, so people can actually move farther out of Paris, and then they take the high-speed rail. It goes like 200 miles an hour, and they come into work, and they walk. There's public transportation, takes them everywhere, and then they get back on the train and go back home. So you can actually travel anywhere all throughout Europe by train. You don't have to fly. As a matter of fact, France is trying to reduce its carbon footprint by reducing the number of commuter flights because of this. Their high-speed rail that's throughout the country. So now, once we get to Lyon, we will be sailing the Colors of Provence itinerary on AMA Waterways. So that is the name of that particular itinerary, plus the Black History tours that are added in. So we'll be sailing on the Ama Christina. It's a beautiful ship. Um, it's got luxury accommodations. You have a cabin steward. My cabin steward used to bring me chocolate every time. They cleaned the cabin 3 times a day, and every time I left and came back, she had chocolate for me. So she was like, her name was Anna. So you see, I remember her name because she left me chocolate. That was 2 years ago. I still remember her. So that is the lovely Ama Christina. And river cruise ships are not like the big giant ocean liners. There are like 200 people max on these ships. That's including the crew. You actually get an opportunity to visit destinations. You get on the ship. It's like a moving boutique hotel. You unpack once, and your hotel just floats down the river to the next town. And then you get off and you do all your tours and your shopping and all have all of your experiences, and then you move on to the next town. So it's just a wonderful way of traveling. Uh, that's the Ama Christina. And on this sailing, you have an opportunity to eat at the chef's table restaurant. So that's the specialty restaurant where the chef you can schedule your time, your evening to eat with like 7 courses. Um, and you get to see the chef making the food. And one thing I'd like to say about this cruise is that all the food on the ship is locally sourced. So at each stop, the chef actually and the staff, they get off the ship and they source the food from the area where they're sailing. So actually, when we were in, let's see, Grinan, one of the areas where we were visiting a truffle farm, our chef came to the farm to buy truffles for us for the meal. So, gourmet dining, chef's table restaurant. There are also active options that you can have on this cruise. You can do the tours by biking, hiking, or fast walking. They have slow walkers and fast walkers, but there are some active tour options. All this is included. So, I just did walking. I did not do biking. It's been a long time. I wasn't in shape for that. Now, if you book air through AMA Waterways, in which their air is quite competitive, the airport transfers come included. So just remember that if you want to book your air, I would advise you to book it through AMA Waterways. Give them a chance. They're pretty competitive, and then your transfers are included. That means your airport transfers from the airport to the hotel or the airport to the ship and back on your way back home. Otherwise, it's an additional charge. Okay, now we'll be sailing the Rhone River from Lyon. So this is a map of Lyon. We'll be starting at Lyon, where the purple diamond is, and this is the route, and these are the different stops. Kimberly, is it unlimited eating or a special reservation? There's no reservation needed, but it's not like a cruise, like an ocean liner. They don't have like the buffet. There's like, because it's a smaller ship and most people are gone, right? You can eat, there's like a little cafe, and then there's the dining hall where you can eat your meals. And and like water, things like that are included. You can get coffee. As a matter of fact, I skipped breakfast a couple times. I actually skipped the tours because me coming from the US, I was like burned out. So it was one day I didn't take any tours because I had to unwind. Because I actually brought my laptop. So I hung out. I sat on the uh, beautiful promenade and sailed down the Rhone. It was so peaceful and beautiful, sailing past castles and just beautiful landscapes. It was relaxing. Yes, we had, they gave us like snacks, things like that, hamburger, French fries in the middle of the day. Then you come back for lunch and you come back for dinner. So it's like 3 meals a day. So it's not like it's a small venue. It's not like these big ocean liners. So you're going to be gone for the most part anyway. Trust me, you're going to be gone. You won't be there. It's not like an ocean liner where when you're on the ocean liners, you're there to enjoy the ship because the ship is the resort, right? This is a river cruise is different because ocean liners or they take you to countries and river cruises take you through them. So this is sort of like a immersive experience where all of your tours are included, including your transportation to and from, everything, even like your entry fees. Everything is included. So you're going to be doing things. So you more than likely will not be on that ship. It's nothing like an ocean liner. So it's every day you're doing something different. It's an adventure. It truly, truly is. So, and then we will sail from Lyon down to Arles, which is, it's near the Mediterranean. And then that's once we disembark is where we will we'll travel to Marseille at the end of the tour. So on to the activities and tours. Lyon City Tour. So the Lyon City Tour is, you have options. There are 2 tours per day. You can either do 1 or 2. I did both. Sometimes I did 1 because a couple times I went shopping. One day I just ditched all the tours altogether because I went shopping because we were in Lyon for 2 days. So Lyon, I went shopping one day in Lyon. And the second day I went on the culinary tour. So here you go. These culinary tours. So I know you're asking about unlimited food. The culinary tours, we went to the market in Lyon and everything was included. The food, the wine, we had it tasting tours in Lyon. So we ate. So there's also the Villefranche Beaujolais wine route, which is a wine tasting tour. So we'll be passing through and visiting some of the wine regions, visiting the wineries, visiting the vineyards, seeing how they produce the wine, seeing how they grow the grapes, and there will be tastings. So that's food included there. Then there'll also be an onboard jazz and wine experience. So they will be on this particular sailing, there will be a jazz evening on board the ship. And then another stop is in Vienne, and where the wine and chocolate tour will embark. So you see chocolate on there? That's what I like, chocolate. So they do a wine and chocolate pairing. You don't have to drink to be able to go there. You don't have to drink alcohol to go on these tours. There are other options, but it's just a wonderful experience because you're also going to see how they grow the grapes. You're seeing what the process is. You're tasting chocolate. They have other drinks for you, if you don't drink alcohol. But for those of you who do, they have tastings. And then there's another tour of the Hermitage. This is a famous wine region as well. And they also make chocolate here in this area. So there's a tour here. Now, all of these tours you don't have to take. There are optional tours. These are just highlights because this is the wine and cuisine episode. So There's also VVA. That's where we have the truffle farm visit, where we go truffle farming and we do the truffle hunt with the farmer. And this is where the captain of my ship went there to buy truffles for dinner that he was making on board our vessel. Truffles are a pungent type of mushroom. They only grow in certain types of soil under certain conditions in certain places, and the dog has to sniff them out and dig them up. And then they're very expensive. And then we'll move on to downriver to Avignon, where the Papal Palace is. There are also jazz venues in Avignon, as well as a taste of Avignon. There's a restaurant area where there's a taste, where you can have a tasting of the different types of food and restaurants in Avignon. Then we will make it down to Arles, and in Arles, there's actually an ancient Roman um, Colosseum in Arles, which is amazing. So actually, France has a huge Roman footprint there, and I was pretty shocked when I went there and saw aqueducts and Colosseum ruins and temples, a temple to Livia and Augustus Caesar, Augustus Caesar, and it was still there, thousands of years old, right smack dab in the middle of town. So this is where the end of our cruise will end in Arles, and then we'll have an additional day for the Marseille Black Heritage Tours. And that is just an overview of wine and cuisine on the Good Life and Soul, an Epicurean and experience. So remember to sign up for the VIP list. And let me put that inside the post. So just in case you haven't signed up, sign up for the VIP list because when the trip is released, and it should be Monday when the trip is going to be released, the pricing will only go to the people that are on the VIP list first because river cruises they don't have the same amount of space as you find on your ocean liners. This is an immersive experience, so the VIPs will be offered booking first so they can secure their space. You will have 12 months to pay low deposits, as well as Kimberly says these shoes are made for walking. Yes, ma'am, you'll do a lot of walking. And you know one thing? I actually lost weight when I went. I l Amazingly, because I walked a lot, and my back didn't hurt because I did a lot of walking. So, I was surprised, probably from all of the activity, not probably, because of all of the activity. So, yeah, so just make sure you're on the VIP list. Tomorrow I'll be going live to, sh go over the rest of the, cruise and the itinerary, just sort of the overview of the ship and some of the other important things that you would need to know tomorrow. And if you have any questions, you could come with your questions tomorrow. And come on, my slide doesn't want to progress. Okay, so remember the good life and some soul. Okay, so remember, oh, I'm clicking on the wrong thing. Let me get back to my presentation. The good life and some soul and Epicurean experience. Join me tomorrow at 7. But remember to get on the VIP list. So this is Priscilla with Scylla Travel. Does anybody have any comments or any questions? Put them in there. Put them in the chat. Let me know if you've got any questions at all. Or you can, for those of you on the replay, you can make your comments and I will get back with you. Or you can actually DM me or email me. I'm agent@scyllatravel.com. So you're welcome, Joan. Nice to have you today. So remember, uh, sign up for the VIP list. Okay, sign up so you'll be first to know. All right, so be there or be square. Make sure you're on that list so you will have an opportunity to get your deposit in to lock down your space. Okay, So tomorrow I'll be going over, the cabins and things of that nature, things like that on the ship, information like that tomorrow. So remember, um, if no one's got any other questions, then I guess we'll call it a night or morning or afternoon, whenever you're looking at this video. So this is Priscilla with Scylla Travel, hoping that you have a great rest of your day, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and whenever it is that you're looking at this video. And remember, as always, live the dream. Bye-bye.